Alright, so for our first project, we are going to make a bouncing ball animation. This is a standard kind of thing that that animators practice on. It helps you develop timing and shape and learn things like squash and stretch and all these kind of things. So it's a great introduction to both how to use the software and how to think about animation. Okay, so down here in the timeline, first thing I want to do is make a new layer. So I'll just click on this new layer icon, the little page, and now we've got two layers. Here, if I click on the name of it, we've got to double click. Yeah, double click on the name of it, and then we can rename. So I'll name that ball, and I'll name this ground. Okay. Then just to the right of that, we have these things here. These are keyframes, and you see both of them are empty. So on the ground one, with ground selected, go up, choose the paintbrush, and I'm just going to draw a line horizontally across. So this is going to be the reference for the ground. Now, I don't want to mess with that anymore, so I'm going to lock that layer. Now, anything that I do, if I hit the eraser, it's not going to change it. Okay? From now on, I'll just stay on the ball layer. And I'm going to start out with my ball at its highest point that it's going to start out at. And let's do a slightly smaller brush size. Okay, so I just I'm using one of these bamboo tablets with a pen tool kind of thing. So I just kind of hover it over without actually touching the pen to the tablet. You hover over and you can see where your cursor's at. So I kind of start drawing the circle and then slowly touch it. Okay, with these, we're just kind of sketching, right? So it doesn't matter about getting it precisely exact. We just want a basic circle shape. Okay, so there's where the ball is going to start out at. Now down here, see, we're going 24 frames per second. So if I want this bounce to last 1 second, then I'm going to, let's go here to the 24th frame. And here we can go, I forgot where the keyframe is, timeline. Oh, here we go. Insert, timeline, keyframe. Okay, so now what it did was it just copied what was in the original keyframe and made another one here. I'm actually going to erase this one. So leave that first one, click on the last keyframe. See how it's all selected there? I'm going to hit delete. Because I don't want it exactly the same, otherwise it'll look like it's paused when it got up there. What I'm going to do instead, go down here to the very bottom, and let's turn on the onion skin right there. Okay, so now you can see your onion skins here in the numbers section of the timeline. If you click on the edges of them, you can adjust how much of the previous or following frames you want to see. Okay, so I click on this last keyframe, and so with the onion skin showing 1 before that, this is showing where the ball is in the previous keyframe. So now I can try and trace pretty close on top of that one. Like that. Okay, now see how this keyframe's filled in. Alright. Now notice how my ground has disappeared. If I go to frame 1, I can see the ground, but here in the last frame, I don't see it anymore. That's because right now the ground is only lasting for 1 frame. See how all the rest of these are blank? So if I just go to this last frame, let me unlock this for a sec, And I'm going to right click or control click here. And instead of keyframe, I just want a frame, regular frame. So all that does is extend what was in this first keyframe all the way until frame 24. Alright, so now I've got my beginning and my end point, which are pretty close to the same. We're doing that because this is going to end up being a looping animation. So even though we'll draw each position of it once we export it as a movie, we can turn it on to loop, and then it'll look like it's bouncing over and over. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is go right here in the middle. So there actually isn't an exact middle between 1 and 24, so you can choose either frame 12 or 13. It'll say down here what frame number you're at. So if I want to go to a certain frame, I can click that. Let's say go to 13. There we go. So now if I right click on that, I can insert blank keyframe. Okay, so it gets rid of what was there before. Now with the onion skinning, see how I'm only seeing the one ball right now. That's because the onion skin will show, I've got it set right here to show 2 frames before and 2 frames after. But the 2 frames after it are empty right now. So if I wanted to see actually the last keyframe, I'd have to extend this. Now I can see both of them. So in this case, since it's right in the middle, this is where the ball should be hitting the ground. Okay, so I could just kind of hover here and draw my ball shape. Now, the difference here is when we're pretending this is some kind of a rubber ball, right? Like what you'd play kickball with. When a rubber ball hits the ground, it doesn't keep its perfect circle shape. So this is what's called squash and stretch. So instead of drawing it as a circle like that, it should kind of be more like a pancake. We want to try and keep the same volume, so the amount of space that would be inside this ball, but just kind of push it down flatter. So something more like that. Okay, so it's bouncing, squishes. Alright, now I'm going to go to the frame just before that, and let's right click on there, insert blank keyframe. Now in this one so that middle frame is the squash part of squash and stretch. So the ones before and right after it should be the stretch part of squash and stretch. So in this case, the ball will be more elongated like this, because it's been speeding up, coming towards the ground. Kind of like that. Let's try it a little better. Okay, something like that. And then let's do a similar thing for this one right after it. Insert blank keyframe. Now notice how my onion skinning is showing more than just the 2 frames because I've got this extended. So if I don't want to see that many, I can cut some of that out. But since I want this one to be pretty similar to the other stretched out one, this might help. Okay, so now that's where it's going to bounce back up. Alright, so those are the basics of how to get started with your first few keyframes.